Hey guys, welcome back to Project Bodybuilding, and I am finally back with your regularly scheduled content. So today we are returning to the road to the 2024 Mr. Olympia series. We literally have days before the Olympia, so we are pulling out all the stops and doing some major matchups before the big dance. Today we have a rematch of sorts. They both got a victory over each other in the past, and this will be their third face-off. Today we will be comparing Hunter Labrada's latest version from the Italy Pro against Nick Walker from this year's New York Pro. In 2021, Hunter got the dub over Nick at the Olympia in a very controversial decision, but in 2022, Hunter slipped, and Nick worked his way into that top 3. And of course, in 2023, Nick had to sit out last minute, but many think he would have placed very high that year. Some even believe he could have won last year. So as I said, this will be the best 2 out of 3 this year, so let's get a preview of this rematch. Remember, if you guys like this series, be sure to hit the like button and subscribe for more. I do have to preface here that I hate doing comparisons with these photos for Hunter. This is not how he looked, full stop. You guys even saw that from the short video at the beginning. That lighting and even the photo quality washed out a lot of his detail. Now I will say, I don't think he was peaked 100%, and he did lack separation fair and square, before lighting, cameras, or any of that. But I'm going to try my best to give Hunter at least some benefit of the doubt because I do think that's the right thing to do. But I gotta be honest, I never liked his front double. I definitely prefer it even less now that he crunches down on his abs instead of doing it like a half vacuum sort of thing where he elongates his torso. But let's make no mistake about it, Nick has some shape issues too. It's the classic things you always hear about Nick. The stomach looks okay in this shot, but he has the weird structure. But even with his weird structure, I prefer him here. His legs are more cut, even though they're a little stubby. His lats are wider and are just better. And his arms from this angle in this shot are better. Hunter has some really good arms, but Nick is Nick. There's almost no one that beats him today. Hunter's arms are still fantastic though. They're the highlight of his pose. So I prefer all those things on Nick, but the biggest factor here is the midsection. For once, it's actually winning Nick the pose. Hunter is too washed out, the lower stomach protrudes, the sternum is weird, and on top of those flaws in the midsection, he has the pec tear as well. Overall, Nick is more separated, has the better body parts, and legitimately is more pleasing to look at. Hunter has fantastic arms though and a bigger structure than Nick, and again, I have to account for the lighting and all that, so I'm very hesitant to do 3-point wins in this comparison, but I think there's more than enough here for Nick to win with 2 points. The front lat really doesn't get better for Hunter. In fact, I think it gets a little bit worse, but Nick just completely falls off a cliff. Look, I'm not pleased with Hunter. The chest is really flat and the lats are mid at best, but Nick is just bad. The stomach gets really round here, the chest has no detail, and that poor structure is on full display. I wouldn't say Hunter wins this one, but Nick is definitely the bigger loser. I'm just handing Hunter a 2-point win and moving on. At least he has the decent structure here, but really that margin is coming from me just hating Nick's pose. The front shots are usually hit or miss for Nick, but these side shots are where he usually begins to make up some ground, and today will be no different. First off, in the pecs, Hunter is really disappointing. He's flat and has zero detail. Even though Nick has smaller pecs on his frame, he clearly has more pec height and much more detail and hardness. And after this win, there really isn't any way Hunter can pull this pose off. But can he stop the bleeding, so to speak? Well, the delt and arm on him look pretty beefy, and although Nick's arms look great from the front, he doesn't look as impressive from the side. But this is so close that it doesn't really matter. And the side leg is kind of the same deal. Nick wins. He has even more size and grainier detail. But this is probably the highlight of Hunter's pose. I wouldn't say it's a saving grace, but he definitely is better off having a good side leg that is fairly close to Nick's. And from the overall perspective, Hunter is bigger structurally than Nick, but Nick is just more muscular. He is just so thick and looks maxed out, which is a good thing for this shot. With all that said, what really is the selling point for Hunter here? I have Nick winning everything. The main things at least quite easily. So I gotta be honest, I see this as a 3-point win. I don't see a shiny enough silver lining for Hunter to take anything off of Nick's margin. The rear double has definitely gotten significantly better for Hunter. In fact, in this pic, I think he looks better than he probably actually is. Hunter's upper back delts region is really detailed, more than Nick's just based on these photos. In fact, while Nick wins the arms like he usually does, I would give Hunter the delts, there's just more detail there. And yes, I'd give Hunter the upper back as well. But then his back kind of falls off from there. He may be leaning back a lot to create the illusion of thicker lats, but they're still not up to par. He has very underwhelming lat insertions, and there's really just not a whole lot going on here. Nick clearly has the more pronounced lats on his back and a ton more lat thickness. I'd give Nick the lower back for the same reasons basically. Hunter leans way back to try to wring out some more detail there, but it just ain't happening. Nick doesn't have much going on the lower back, but he certainly has more going on than Hunter. And in the lower body, I definitely have to go with Nick. The quad sweeps actually look really good from the rear, the glutes are tighter and drier, and the hamstrings on him are just insane. So overall, Hunter is solid downstairs and brings a good upper body, but I have to be honest, I don't know if this is how it'll look standing right beside Nick. Meaning, I think this photo may actually actually be doing him a favor. But all of the other photos have hurt Hunter, so maybe he'll actually look like this, or maybe even better. He has been progressing after all. I'll bite, and I'll make this pretty narrow. But with the better lower body and the more well-rounded back, I am still going to give the win to Nick. Not by a whole lot though. Nick is not super detailed or super hard. He didn't have his normal grainy back like he usually does at the New York Pro this year. I'm mainly going with him because I think I know better, but Hunter is kind of creeping up more than Nick should be allowing. So I'm just going to give Nick a 1-point win here. The rear lat spread is definitely a little more cut and dry than the last pose. There really isn't anything you can say lighting wise or whatever to have Hunter doing that well in this one. We saw in the last pose that Hunter had some good upper back detail, but we know that his lats are not up to par with Nick's. Nick has the much better insertions and he's filling those out quite well. With that, he has some great taper and just a great looking meat shield. Not to mention, he's probably wider than Hunter. He's at least the same width. Nick also wins the detail aspects. He has those nicely separated and uniform spinal erectors and traps. This is about the only place you can run to Hunter's defense and scream about how the lighting washes out the detail, and sure, to some extent, I think that's true. But does it really matter a whole lot? Nick has the great detail, he's just as wide, and has the better lats, and with that, the more complete back in this shot. And the lower body is another no-brainer. So is that little extra detail going to be enough to move the needle for Hunter? I don't think so. With or without better lighting, I see this as going to Nick by 2 points, as he is now easily winning both the upper and lower body portions of the pose. Now we have the main event of this comparison. I think both guys' best shot is probably the side try. It's definitely Hunter's best. His abs don't look too bad here. The waist is decent, could be a little better. The pecs could be thicker as well, but the side leg is solid and the tricep is the crown jewel of this pose. He has great mass here and even some great feathering. However, once again, I just see Nick as an upgrade in most areas. Like in the side chest, Nick is winning the side leg by a little. Hunter's again solid, but Nick has even more detail. Nick's pecs are also a lot fuller than Hunter's, and the biggest thing that Nick does right here is actually the midsection. As weird as it sounds, Nick wins here fairly easily. The waistline is just as good as Hunter's, but he actually has decent abs with zero lower stomach / belly button issues. So yet again, Nick Walker's actually winning the midsection of all things. But one thing he doesn't win is the tricep. At the New York Pro, he just wasn't locking it out and not bringing out the full extent of his separation. He can still take Hunter head on in terms of mass, but I'm giving Hunter the edge in the namesake of the pose because he has size and detail. Let's not act like Nick isn't at least 9 out of 10 on the tricep alone though. Hunter's just a little bit better. But that is not going to be enough for Hunter to win the entire pose. I'll still make it very close because these are the two best side triceps of our time, but Nick takes this. He has a better side leg, a much better midsection, better pecs, and come Mr. Olympia time, he may even have the better tricep as well, if he fixes his posing. But Hunter still did take the tricep here, and overall, even in some of the areas that Nick won, Hunter is still more than solid. And after all, no one except for Nick Walker is beating him in this shot. So I'll keep it close, Hunter's fantastic, Nick just gives us a little more, so I'll give him a little 1-point win. Now we have the complete opposite of those great side triceps. These abs and thighs poses are pretty bad. Nick has the stubby legs on full display here. His structure really gets exposed in this pose. And Hunter has his flaws exposed heavily here as well. So how could I possibly pick a winner? I really did think about leaving this pose blank because what the f. Let me know down in the comments who you have winning this one. There isn't a right choice, they're both wrong. Nick has the better overall abs, even though he just looks so odd. And Hunter has some freaky quads, and in the videos and in real life, they were even more separated and feathered, but his stomach really holds him back. Nick's quads don't fit his upper body for sure, they look out of place, but at least he has good separation to them. Really, with both of them doing little right, this is going to be about whose flaws you can stomach more. Pun not really intended. To me, I have Nick being the survivor here. His stomach is not great, make no mistake about it. Neither are the quad sweeps, but he beats Hunter in the abs and brings okay quads for what we're dealing with here. Hunter has better quads, but the abs are even worse than Nick's quads, if that makes sense. Basically, Hunter's weak link is weaker than Nick's. And to me, the abs always mattered a little bit more. At least Nick has a symmetrical set, albeit over a round gut, but I got over that before I got over Hunter's messy abs and belly button / hernia issue. And that's why I have Nick taking the smallest of small victories, taking the tiniest of 1-point wins here. Nick is just slightly higher than Hunter in the race to the bottom. Luckily, the most muscular is a great shot for both guys, so we're actually ending this comparison on a high note. They're both massive and very complete. They have everything you want, but there's just something special about Nick, and I think a lot of that has to do with quality. But let's break this down a little further. Nick's legs here compared to either of Hunter's variations look quite good. It's not like he's posing them any better, and they definitely didn't get better pose to pose. They look better because the waist is now out of the equation. I say this all the time. Nick's quads are actually good, they just don't fit his wide waist and the rest of his physique. But the waist is being hidden here, so they don't don't look that out of place. So I would actually give Nick the quads over Hunter. Hunter looks to be his best here in the legs, but the quality on Nick is just top notch. He is so much more neatly separated. Moving up, who's taking the midsection this time around? Again, versus either variation, Nick wins this easily. Hunter's hands clasped obviously downplays the stomach a little bit, but you can still see the abs and they're incredibly shallow. And in the right hand photo, not only are the abs shallow, but the lower stomach comes out, and that's not a good look whatsoever. Nick doesn't look like how he used to. He's having trouble crunching down on those abs yet again, but you can't deny that they're still 10 times better than Hunter's. Moving up along even further, we have the pecs, and this actually gets a little interesting. This is the worst point for Nick in this pose, which says something. He's just a bit flat and not that detailed. In this shot, his chest looks a bit fuller, but that one pec has the noticeable tear. Overall, both guys are probably about even, accounting for everything. And finally, in the arms and delts, Hunter brings a ton of size and fullness, but Nick brings a lot of mass too, but he's hard as nails. His delts are even more capped off and separated from his arms, and the same goes for just the actual arms. They're harder and more separated from his delts. Now overall, I do think Hunter has the width and overall size advantages. On stage, he would be bigger than Nick, but Nick would probably edge him out in the pound for pound muscularity. Nick certainly wouldn't look small next to him. But Hunter brings a ton of size, and that's very important in this shot. Actually, this is just one of the better, most musculars out there right now. But Nick has 10 out of 10 size, muscularity, and much better quality, and in this shot, he doesn't have a weak point. The chest was a little weak, but is it that much worse than Hunter's? Is it even worse at all? From top to bottom, Nick won most of, if not all body parts with that better quality, and he didn't have a stomach issue. Hunter is very close, and I think in real life this would get even closer, so it's not a clean sweep for Nick. I see arguments for both 2 points and a 1 point win, but I'll be nice to Hunter here since I really like his shot, especially that right side photo in spite of the stomach, so we'll just make it a 1 point win for the mutant and head to our second round of judging. In this round of judging, we are now looking at the total packages and judging them based on 4 overall categories: shape, muscularity, conditioning, and flaws. Let's start with the most conflicting category, flaws. Both Hunter and Nick are heavily flawed individuals. Nick has just 2 main issues, but they go hand in hand. His structure is off, he has the short legs for his torso, and his stomach was bigger at the New York Pro. Hunter has more superficial flaws, I guess you can say, but he has more of them. He has the pec tear, the protruding sternum region, messy abs, a bloated lower stomach, which is probably just a hernia. So all in all, who has worse flaws? Well, let me know what you're thinking down in the comments, but I have to be honest, I get more hung up on Hunter's flaws. Now, I could still leave this category blank, and I probably should because Nick has some damning flaws, but I decided to give him this with a 1 point win because I like Hunter's flaws even less. That doesn't mean they're less impactful than Nick's, but overall, I just can't get over Hunter's flaws as much as I can Nick's. Let's move on though and go to conditioning. I will fully defend Hunter here and say his picks didn't do him justice. Look at the video I have up here. Hunter was certainly in condition. However, I will still give Nick a 1 point win for his separation. I think the conditioning was close between these two. Clearly Hunter had that grainy look, but the separation between muscles was a little bit better in more areas on Nick's physique. This goes back to what I said earlier about Hunter not peaking 100%. The conditioning may have been there, but the lack of fullness or hardness or whatever made him not as separated as Nick. Now we have muscularity. This is a little tricky because Nick is probably a bit more muscular pound for pound, I said that earlier, but Hunter is just bigger with a bigger structure. They're both similar too in terms of completeness. Hunter had the bigger legs, but Nick had the better back, and that's just one major trade-off. Ultimately, what I decided to do was to give Hunter a 1 point win in shape and Nick a 1 point win in muscularity to match. This allows things to be a bit more balanced, I feel. Nick's structural flaws and Hunter's overall better shape and structure will be represented in the shape category. That trade-off there is represented by that 1 point win. But Nick being very muscular pound for pound and having the least impactful flaws gets him wins in the muscularity and flaws categories. Nick is definitely still the most well-rounded individual, but I see this as the best compromise for everything here. This 1 point win in shape does kind of balance things out for Hunter, and I think everything gets represented. Alright, and now it's time to take a look at the final scores. And it's funny, literally in my last comparisons, I said we had one of the most resounding victories in history of Project Bodybuilding, and this one was just a couple of points shy of beating that record. But yes, that means we have a wipeout this time around. Nick Walker won today's comparison with a whopping 81.4 points to Hunter Labrada's 18.6. Now I have to be honest, I didn't expect it would be that far apart. I expected Nick to win, but to win by over 60 points is crazy. But looking back and checking my work, I couldn't possibly change anything to make this better for Hunter. As of right now, there aren't too many changes that really hold water in the poses. Maybe I could have Nick winning the front double just by a point, and then Hunter could maybe get a 3-point win in the front lat because that pose is awful for Nick. And then maybe in the overall physique categories, I could give Hunter conditioning because let's just say the picks were that bad for him. And maybe you thought Nick's flaws were worse. That's really the only fair critique of my judging here, I would say. So let's also say Hunter would get the flaws category by 1. All those arguments suck, and even if Hunter won all those arguments and moved those margins, he would still lose clearly. And just based on what we saw today, I was very dead set on Nick placing higher than Hunter come Mr. Olympia time. However, we got an extremely impressive update from Hunter while I was finishing this video. Let's make no mistake about it, with the version we use today, Nick still wins. But as for their future placings, this update has shaken my predictions. I haven't made my final predictions yet, but I was going to have Hunter somewhere around 8th. After seeing this, however, he's somewhere within my top 6. Here in this update, he's improved all of my major gripes. He brought the midsection down already, he's pulling a vacuum in the first 2 front shots too. He's also bringing a better peak and really working on his separation. The video speaks for itself, but in the caption, he outlines his intent. He says the midsection will be better at the O, he's going to have better presentation too, and he says he will be more dug out. With these changes, the margins could potentially get a lot closer. With a better midsection, he really limits Nick's win in the front double. He could even flip it. The front lat spread would be the full 3-point win for Hunter. The extra sharpness could help him in the back and side shots as well, and obviously it helps in the conditioning category. And pulling a vacuum and bringing in the waist also helps in the shape category. So this could get a lot closer. Unfortunately, we don't have stage shots to go off of with these updates in this particular version, so this is all speculation. And yes, let me reiterate one more time. As of right now, I have Nick winning this comparison between these versions, and right now I would place him just slightly ahead of Hunter. Basically, I think Nick is in the driver's seat right now. He'll probably improve on this version too, as he always makes improvements, but we can clearly see Hunter will also be improved. Nick is the favorite right now and he won this comparison, but between lighting and the improvements both guys have made, on show day this will be a different ballgame. How different exactly? We'll just have to wait and see. Well, that's going to do it for today's video. Let me know down in the comments who you have winning the regular comparison and how that last minute update of Hunter changes things. And let me know who you have placing higher at the Mr. Olympia. And of course, if you guys like these videos, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more. And if you guys want to support the channel even further, be sure to head over to Arms Race Nutrition. Then after shopping, be sure to use my code Project10 for 10% off your entire order. That's code Project10 at armsracenutrition.com. And finally, with all that said, I want to thank you guys for watching, and I will see you all in the next video.
Get Alexia.